Am I the a-hole because I call my psycho ex's unrelated child my Naughter? Buckle up. 15 years ago, I was 25 and was finishing my contract, and my then girlfriend of 3 years, Natalie, was acting increasingly strange. I came back from a 2-month assignment and was prepared to break up with Natalie. She came by and gave me the good news she was pregnant. I asked how far along she was. She said 5 weeks, so I broke it off with her and told her she needed to do better at maths. She refused the breakup and insisted the baby was mine. So I told her the following: 1. Paternity test, and 2. If the child was mine, we can talk about financial support and custody arrangements with lawyers. She refused both and told everyone we both knew that I was a deadbeat for knocking her up and leaving her. I told everyone I was on a 2-month assignment when she conceived, but a few insisted for the sake of decency I house her and give her limited support. I consulted a lawyer about this mess, and the lawyer made it very, very clear that any overt support I give could be seen as me taking responsibility. So I told these friends that, and most dropped it, except one guy, who again insisted that charity couldn't be used as a legal cudgel like that. I told him if he believes that he can house her. He agreed to drop it after that. Child was born and not even going to do the whole thing. She didn't look like me because most babies are born with squashed faces, and all I saw were the pics she sent me with messages like, "Emma wants to know where daddy is." She still refused to take any paternity tests. But her constantly showing up with that baby got to the point where I filed a restraining order. Fun fact: in my state, a permanent RO is not, in fact, permanent. It is 2 ducking years long. The only way to get it longer is if there was a violent crime associated. And apparently bugging someone with a baby that's not theirs is not a violent crime. So my life for the last 14 years has been me renewing the RO every 2 years because, once it clears, Natalie shows up again with my not child. I did eventually find a nice girl, get married, and now I have a 9-year-old son, Henry. My wife Kim is well aware of Natalie and Emma. When the cycle begins again, I always say the same thing. 1. Paternity test. 2. Once paternity is proven, I will take custody and get financial support set up. Natalie always refuses and says both are insulting. Recently, the cycle started again, and this time Emma showed up first. She approached my son during a school event, visit to the zoo, and said, "Hi, I'm your big sister Emma." Henry knew about stranger danger and ran away to a teacher. I had to have a very, very painful talk to the teachers and parents that were at the event about my relationship with Emma and Natalie, and how Emma was never my daughter. I even called her my Naughter once or twice in the conversation. After the group disbanded, one of the mothers confronted me and said that while Natalie was in the wrong, telling this poor child I was her father, calling her my Naughter was mocking this situation. I kind of get where she's coming from. I just can't help this child. And the honest truth is that playing in the light of the 2-year cycles is the closest I can get to finding peace in the situation. Edit. To answer the repeated question, in my state, the mother has to start the petition for the father to be established and the test to start. There is no instance where a father can start the petition. There was a chance to do this when Emma was born, but the window was exactly 1 month, and I was much too focused on the RO, not thinking the paternity angle would bite me in the back. One last time. To everyone saying just ask for custody, that'll force a DNA test. Literally can't be done. Been through this enough with a lawyer and have consulted with other lawyers. There are laws protecting children, and a lot of them exist for good reason. I'll explain it the way my lawyer explained it. Imagine there's a woman that ran from an abusive ex. She finds out after she escapes that she's pregnant. She gives birth, never puts the ex on the birth certificate, never tries to file for support because she wants to get as far away from him as possible. He finds out years later and tries to rope her back in using the child as leverage. She can just say no, and the state has to let it go. There is, however, a provision if the father was involved enough to know when the birth was, that he could submit his DNA to the state within 31 days of birth as a potential father, but that time has long passed. The law is designed this way on purpose. In the eyes of the family court, I am a random person, and I was never claimed to Emma. If you think the state wants all children to be claimed by fathers and will gladly submit any DNA test whenever any potential father shows up, find a random single mom, call the family court, and say you want to claim her child. I am tired of everyone acting like all I needed to do was fill out 1 sheet of paper and this nightmare would end. Please, just call a lawyer for a free consultation, or post on legal advice and ask them. It doesn't work that way. Relevant comments. One Redditor wrote, "What really bothers me here is that an RO was in place, but Emma was confident enough to know she was approaching the right kid." Another Redditor wrote, "NTA, at some point it becomes draining and the little girl is going to need some serious therapy after everything is said and done. Why don't you go to the courthouse and make her do one so it can come to an end?" Opie replies, "Because Natalie does not consent to it. And she said she's not seeking any sort of court-ordered support, so the court just shrugs and says get a protective order." Another Redditor suggested, "You could get a court-ordered DNA test. Her claims are slanderous. You could take her to court to prove paternity." Opie replies, "Natalie has long since stopped calling me out for being a deadbeat online. She prefers to show up in person asking if I want to meet our daughter. The last time the cops confronted her about this, she claimed that she only wanted me to act as a paternal father figure to her child. It really depends on the cops that show up." One guy wrote, "NTA, I can understand why someone would think that this is callous, but it's your business and you've every right to use humor to try to deal with it. Don't say that to Emma. Considering that she believes your mom, that would be pretty rude." Now, the burning question. How did she find Henry while he was on a field trip? Opie replies, "We suspect Natalie befriended a mom at the school and got a class schedule, then dropped Emma off at the zoo to be with her brother. Since we are unrelated, I have no idea what school Emma goes to, or who Natalie's friends are. We are being very reactive to the situation, but because there are children involved, my lawyer said that that's the best we can do, and any type of investigation into Natalie beyond where to send legal paperwork could make it seem like mutual contact and hurt any future ROs." Another Redditor wrote, "I feel sorry for Emma because she's been brainwashed by her mother, and that's all she knows. She's innocent in this, yet her world and her sense of identity seems likely to come apart one day. It must be a lie, not just because of the timing, but because the DNA test is such an easy and obvious way to prove it if she's telling the truth." Opie replies, "The offer stays open until Emma turns 18. If she wants to contact me after she turns 18, I will offer Emma herself the DNA test and, depending on the results, act accordingly." Update. 2 days after original post. Got off the phone with my attorney. We have a preliminary hearing on the new RO this week. We will most likely be issued a temporary RO, and then after that another hearing for the permanent RO. CPS is investigating Natalie and Emma's living situation. The teacher's report held a lot of weight, and my lawyer thinks that this might actually be a way to end the madness now. In family court, for minors there exists something that's like a temporary, court-appointed guardian. I think the term is guardian ad litem, who is only a guardian for legal purposes and procedures and decisions of such, including for medical. If the family court appoints such for Emma, we can ask this temporary guardian for the DNA test, get this put to ground. The madness might actually have an ending in sight. Adding here, I feel like I need to explain the relationship I had with Natalie all those years ago. When I got back from my 2-month assignment, I was already dead set on breaking up with her. Her "oh wait, I'm pregnant" was never going to make me marry her. In fact, I doubted she was pregnant for several weeks. The last year of our relationship, several red flags appeared in her behavior, ranging from demanding I check in with her while at work, only hanging out with friends with her present, extreme bouts of jealousy if I ever seemed too friendly with women, including waitresses. I was in a line of work that demanded me being away for long stints, which she hated, but also kept me out of her reach for long periods of time. I think it was halfway through that last year I realized that when I was away, I did not miss her. In fact, I was relieved to plop into a cot and fall asleep after long hours of work without thinking about her. When the pregnancy turned out to be real, I made it clear that with a paternity test, I would pay support, split custody, and be a co-parent and nothing more. She wanted me to be her husband, no questions asked, no test, just pure blind faith and devotion to her and the child. The test, she insisted, was insulting. There was never going to be a relationship, and there was no relationship to salvage with Natalie. On the advice of the first attorney I hired, the deal was no test, no contact. Relevant comments. One Redditor wrote, "That poor girl. She'll grow up either believing OP to a deadbeat dad, or she'll grow up knowing the truth and knowing that her mom is trying to game the system and get money from a guy that is not the father of her child. Either way, she's going to have a lot of stuff to work out in therapy one day. Frankly, I can't believe Opie does not have any legal recourse to force a paternity test. You'd think there'd be one judge who was so annoyed with the constant restraining orders that he would have ordered a paternity test to rid the court system of this bull crap. One Redditor replies, also, that mom probably has a serious mental health struggle. She's kept this going for 15 years. One Redditor adds, she only has to win a concession once to get child support garnished and start getting his wages garnished. That's why she's doing it. She thinks she'll get a payout for back child support and other benefits off his military pay and pension, insurance, etc. To which Opie replies, this angle is actually very likely. I will bring this up with my lawyer. Also, good guess on the military pension. One Redditor wrote, I'm surprised you can't sue her for harassment or potentially defamation. Sounds like she's now putting your actual child at risk, as well as escalating overall. Hopefully she doesn't start resorting to more dangerous tactics, but you may want to look into further protections if possible. Ops replies, this bit of harassment with the CPS report and the new RO should, if we are lucky, be the kill shot we need. One guy wrote, all you had to do was call the police when she violated the restraining order. That would have nailed her flaps to the wall, full stop. Do you want peace? Don't get a useless RO. Have police enforce that shit. That lunatic is no match for the police. OP's replies, she never violates the ROs. She harasses until one is issued. That's why we issue them, to get peace. He then asks OP, and it works for the entire duration of the SO? Not even a hint of contact? To which OP replies, the first 2 times she broke the RO and was punished accordingly. After that she waited out until the RO expired. One guy wrote, I kind of feel like OP's troubles have been karma for how he treated Natalie. Her behavior is totally unhinged for sure. But if he had broken up with her when he first felt like he didn't actually want to be with her instead of stringing her along for half a year, and then basically accusing her of cheating on him, the Naughter wouldn't even exist. Essentially, this post is OP admitting that OP knows this child is his, but he's refused to acknowledge her unless his ex admits to cheating, thereby justifying him leaving her while she was pregnant, and trying to reduce his possible financial culpability. OP replies, the nature of my job back then meant I was on assignment for weeks at a time, sometimes as long as 2 months. The amount of time I was home for the half year was small, and not all of it consecutive. Also, in relationships there's moments when you realize you aren't happy, you don't miss the other person, but it's still a bit of a fog you're working yourself through. Half-started conversation about where we see ourselves, and seeing if there was anything left that are dropped, etc. I'd like to believe I wasn't codependent then, but lack of sleep and lack of stretches of contact made it to where longing for normalcy meant longing for even the bad. Familiarity is a ducking killer. That last trip was one where during it I steeled myself that when I got home I was going to break up. Also, we were never going to be in a relationship afterwards. In the past 14 years, all of the friends we had as mutual have worked their way out of my contact list. I don't see her parents, she doesn't see mine. We have no social circles in common anymore. What does she have to lose to claim me as the father and me taking the test? Public stigma? I wouldn't be talking to her friends. She can tell them whatever the duck she wants. She could brag about how I caved. I wouldn't know, and I most likely wouldn't dispute it if I was the father. No, it sounds like you interpreted a very, very entertaining theory. Story 2. The wedding I ruined, and it was the bride's own fault. My fiancée loved this story so much that she insisted that I share it here. This is the story of how I ruined my aunt's wedding. I was a baby, like 2-year-old at most, at the time, but my dad loves telling this story to anyone who will listen. He said it was both the first time he was a proud father, and it was also his best I told you so moment ever. So I have a very accurate description of the events. My aunt had this vision in her mind of how her wedding would go, especially with me being the only child at the event. She would be not only the perfect bride, but also the best aunt ever. The morning of the wedding, my dad was getting me ready for the ceremony when he picked up on the fact that I had something wrong with me. I was apparently very low energy and moody, which was unusual for me. He raised his concerns with my mom, who immediately called her sister, the bride, to let her know that I might not be able to attend. The plan was that my dad would drop me off at a relative's house that was close to the reception location, and if I was feeling better in time for the reception, I would make an appearance. My aunt was not having it. She insisted that I be at the wedding in its entirety, She somehow convinced my mom that she was just being overly cautious, which coincidentally was the last time she ever tried to convince my mom of anything when it came to me. Dad was reluctant to agree, but eventually caved on the agreement that he would take me to his relative's house if it looked like I was getting worse. Fast forward to the ceremony. It was a wonderful ceremony with my mother as the maid of honor, my dad keeping an eye on me throughout. I didn't make a sound and didn't fuss about, which my dad saw as a red flag. After the ceremony was done, he pulled my mum aside and said that I needed to leave right now. Cue the bride, who after a lot of convincing finally agreed to let me leave, on the condition that I get one photo with her at the reception. We go to the reception venue and get there before anyone else. As my dad hands me over to the bride, he reminds her to be careful. She jostled me quite a bit to get me in the right position. My dad will forever describe this moment as an extra scene from The Exorcist. My aunt says I'll be fine right before I cover her pristine, pure white wedding dress in a river of vomit. Her dress was ruined. There was no coming back from this. The worst part was that she chose that dress specifically because it was comfortable enough that she could wear it all day. So there was no backup plan for her dress getting ruined. My mum and uncle, the groom, spent as much time as they could trying to get the vomit off the dress before the other guests arrived. The result was a very stained dress that didn't exactly smell nice anymore. My dad quickly rushed me to his relative's house, but by the time we got there I was back to my bubbly, energetic self. When my dad returned to the reception and told my mum how I was doing, they had to do everything possible to not burst out laughing. They have better decency than to laugh at a bride's misfortune on their wedding day. Apparently all I needed to do was get it out of my system. I still don't know if my aunt saved the dress, but I don't think she would want a stained wedding dress to remind her of one of the biggest lessons she ever learned. Don't question the parents if they think there's something wrong with their kid. This story is my main reason why my fiancé and I won't have kids at our wedding. Comments. One Redditor wrote, "This definitely beats out my story of ruining my aunt's wedding. It was 1982, and I was 2 years old and loved the Muppets, specifically Miss Piggy. My aunt, who to this day and 5 kids is a wisp of a woman, buys me for Christmas a Miss Piggy doll. Nope, not me at her wedding a few weeks later yelling Miss Piggy, Miss Piggy as I waved my doll at my aunt as she walked down the aisle. Thankfully, she thought it was funny as every time she tells that story, she's always laughing." Another Redditor wrote, "Snicker. Poor you. Our kid one didn't handle large loud crowds very well when she was tiny. DH's only sister got married when one was 7 months old. At the rehearsal dinner at her new IL's condo club room, I was holding kid while I got appetizers. Cue my darling daughter puking all over the food table, missing the guacamole by fractions of an inch. Big bowl of it too. I apologized, took kid outside to the deck and DH cleaned up as best he could, but a lot of food, including the guac, was tossed out. About 20 minutes later, the kid did it again, and we gave up and went home. For the wedding the next day, the kid was not out and about. She slept most of the day in a playpen in IL's darkened bedroom while sister and brother-in-law got married out in the yard. So this is the end of this video. If you guys have any thoughts or suggestions, write it down below in the comments section. And if you enjoyed this story, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. It's free for you guys, and it really helps us to keep delivering you guys the videos continuously. You guys can also support us by checking out the links in the video description in the channel's About section. In the meantime, you can watch these videos. Goodbye.